The internet is absolutely losing its mind right now. And honestly, I'm here for every single chaotic second of it. Ned Fulmer from the Try Guys, yes, that Ned Fulmer who became the most hated BuzzFeed alumni after that devastating cheating scandal with Alex, just made his grand return after 3 entire years of radio silence. We're talking about the same guy who destroyed his Wife Guy brand, betrayed Keith, Zach, and Eugene, and basically nuked his career in the most spectacular way possible. But here's where this gets absolutely insane. Just hours after announcing his comeback with a podcast called Rock Bottom featuring Ariel Fulmer as his first guest, bombshell news broke that they've actually been separated this entire time. The Try Guys tea just got scalding hot, and the timing is so suspicious, it's making my head spin. If you want every single juicy detail about this absolutely unhinged comeback attempt, you better smash that subscribe button right now, because apparently I'm your neighborhood internet drama detective keeping track of all this madness for you. Plus, let's be real. With content like this, you're basically getting premium entertainment for free. And I promise, my detective work is way better than whatever Netflix documentary they'll eventually make about this mess. Let me paint you a picture of what the Try Guys empire looked like before everything went to absolute hell. We're talking about September 2022, when these guys were absolutely dominating YouTube with millions of subscribers, successful merchandise lines that fans were fighting over, sold-out live tours across the country, and a fan base that basically worshipped the ground they walked on. Ned had carefully crafted his entire public persona around being the ultimate wife guy. And I mean every single video, social media post, and public appearance was designed to showcase him as the perfect husband who was completely devoted to Ariel and their family. This man never missed an opportunity to gush about their marriage in the most sickeningly sweet way possible. He would constantly talk about how much he loved being a husband and father, how Ariel was his soulmate, and how their relationship was basically relationship goals for everyone watching. The irony of what was about to happen is so thick, you could cut it with a knife. So when blurry photos surfaced showing him allegedly making out with Try Guys employee Alex at a New York City bar, the internet didn't just explode. It completely lost its collective mind in the most spectacular fashion imaginable. This wasn't just another celebrity cheating scandal that people would scroll past and forget about in a week. This was a complete workplace nightmare, wrapped in devastating personal betrayal, served with a massive side of mind-blowing hypocrisy that left everyone's jaws on the floor. The power dynamics made everything infinitely worse than your typical affair. Ned wasn't just Alex's co-worker. He was literally her boss, which added layers of workplace inappropriateness that made the whole situation even more disgusting. According to the rumors that spread like wildfire across every social media platform, they were spotted together multiple times in public, at Harry Styles' concerts, and there were even reports of them being caught in compromising situations around the neighborhood. The evidence kept piling up like a cart crash in slow motion, and fans started conducting their own investigations like they were working for the FBI. What made this situation absolutely devastating was how it affected literally everyone around him. Sharp-eyed fans began noticing that Ned was being weirdly edited out of recent Try Guys videos, and the editing was so clunky and obvious that it became more suspicious than helpful. The Try Guys initially weren't addressing the swirling rumors, which led to massive speculation about whether Keith, Eugene, and Zach knew what was happening and were trying to protect their friend and business partner. When the truth finally came out, Keith Habersberger, Eugene Liang, and Zach Kornfeld didn't mess around or try to sweep anything under the rug like some people expected them to. They dropped a video titled, "What Happened?" that became so viral it inspired an SNL skit and dominated internet discourse for weeks. They confirmed that Ned had been in a consensual workplace relationship and was no longer with the company, but the damage was already catastrophic on multiple levels that most people don't even realize. Within just 11 days of the incident being reported, Ned was completely removed from everything Try Guys related. But this decision came at a massive financial cost that honestly broke my heart for the remaining guys. Entire videos that had already been filmed, edited, and scheduled for release had to be completely scrapped, which meant months of work and thousands of dollars just disappeared into thin air. The remaining guys lost significant money, months of content they had worked incredibly hard on, and most importantly, a friend they thought they knew and trusted completely. Keith later said in interviews that the whole experience felt like going through a devastating breakup with someone you had built your entire career and life around. Eugene made it crystal clear that what happened wasn't acceptable, especially in a workplace setting where power dynamics were involved. And he intelligently pointed out how women in these situations always seem to receive way more backlash than the men, which is exactly what happened to Alex, who received death threats and had to completely disappear from public view. The remaining 3 Try Guys handled the entire nightmare with class, transparency, and legal precision that made them look like absolute professionals, which only made Ned's actions look worse and more selfish by comparison. While they were dealing with the fallout of his choices, he was nowhere to be found. After posting a brief, carefully worded statement confirming the affair and saying he was working things out with his family, Ned basically vanished from the internet, completely and utterly. He deleted or privated most of his social media accounts, stopped posting entirely, and essentially became a digital ghost, haunting the corners of the internet. He and Ariel were occasionally spotted out in public, still wearing their wedding rings, leading many people to believe they were working through things privately and trying to save their marriage. But for 3 entire years, they stayed completely out of the public eye. Before I dive deeper into this absolutely wild story, make sure you hit that subscribe button because honestly, keeping track of all this drama is basically a full-time job at this point, and I need you on my team for when the next internet catastrophe inevitably drops. Plus, I promise to keep you updated on whatever chaos unfolds next, and trust me, there is always more chaos. So when Ned announced this podcast comeback with Ariel as his first guest on September 16th, 2025, and yes, that exact date is extremely significant for reasons that will become clear, people immediately started absolutely dragging Ariel in the comment sections across every platform. The assumption was that she had stood by him through everything and was now helping him rehabilitate his completely destroyed public image, which made people furious. Comments flooded in, telling her she had no self-respect, questioning why she would subject herself to this kind of public humiliation all over again, and basically treating her like she was complicit in his comeback attempt. People were genuinely angry at her for what they perceived as enabling his return to the spotlight after he had caused so much damage to so many people's lives and careers. But here's where the story takes a plot twist that absolutely nobody saw coming and changes literally everything we thought we knew about this situation. Just a few hours after the People magazine interview announcing his podcast went live, another bombshell dropped that left everyone completely speechless and scrambling to delete their harsh comments about Ariel. Multiple sources confirmed that Ned and Ariel had actually separated and were no longer together romantically. Ned Fulmer and Ariel Fulmer confirmed that they are separated 3 years after the Try Guys cheating scandal, which completely flipped the narrative on its head and made everyone realize they had been making assumptions based on incomplete information. According to the reports, they had separated sometime after the original scandal, and while many people assumed Ariel had stood by him indefinitely like some kind of doormat, the truth was they hadn't been romantically together for a significant period of time. This revelation completely changed the narrative and left everyone questioning everything they thought they knew about their relationship
and the situation. The timing of this separation announcement raised so many questions that honestly made my head spin. Were they planning to reveal this information on the podcast all along as some kind of dramatic reveal to generate buzz? Did they rush out this announcement early because people were dragging Ariel in the comments and they needed to set the record straight before it got worse? Or was this always part of some carefully calculated PR strategy to generate maximum buzz and controversy around his comeback attempt? When the first episode of Rock Bottom finally dropped on September 17th, we got to hear directly from both Ned and Ariel about their relationship status and what had actually happened in the aftermath of the scandal that destroyed their lives. Ariel confirmed what had been reported, saying clearly, "We are not together, we live separately," and explaining that we are devoted co-parents to our two beautiful children. In the podcast episode, Ariel opened up about the moment she realized what was actually happening with the affair, and honestly, her raw emotion was absolutely heartbreaking to hear. She said, "How did I not see what was going on? What was so messed up in my brain that I couldn't actually see what was happening in this picture?" She described the moment when she finally confronted Ned about the rumors, saying that when she looked at him, the veil just fell, and she could see the guilt written all over his face. Throughout the entire episode, you could tell this conversation was incredibly difficult and uncomfortable for Ariel, and it honestly made me wonder why she put herself through this public ordeal. People in the comments noted that she could barely look at him while discussing the scandal, and many questioned whether this was really necessary for her healing process. Some called her participation brave, others called it completely unnecessary, but everyone agreed it was painful and uncomfortable to watch. Meanwhile, while Ned was trying to stage his grand comeback and rebrand himself as some kind of recovery expert and podcast host, the remaining Try Guys have been absolutely thriving without him in ways that honestly make his absence look like the best thing that ever happened to them. Keith Habersberger, Eugene Liang, and Zach Kornfeld have continued creating incredible content, built their brand stronger than it ever was with Ned, and moved on from the drama completely and professionally. They recently launched their own streaming service called Second Try TV, expanded their cast with new talented creators who bring fresh energy to their content, and have been winning awards and growing their audience significantly. The contrast between their continued success and Ned's desperate attempt at relevance has not been lost on fans or casual observers who have been watching this saga unfold. While he was sitting in exile trying to figure out how to make a comeback without looking like a complete villain, they were building an empire and proving definitively that they never needed him in the first place. Their ability to not only survive, but absolutely thrive after losing a founding member speaks volumes about their talent, work ethic, and character, qualities that apparently Ned was lacking. Ironically, Eugene Liang recently announced he'll be stepping back from the group after this season to pursue other creative projects. But even that news was received with understanding and support from fans because it was handled with complete transparency, advance notice, and class, the exact opposite of how Ned's exit went down. The internet's reaction to Ned's return has been overwhelmingly negative, and honestly, that shouldn't surprise anyone with half a brain who's been paying attention to public sentiment. Social media platforms have been absolutely flooded with people expressing their shock that he actually thought this comeback attempt was a good idea, their disgust at his timing, and their complete lack of interest in his redemption arc. The comments range from simple unfollows and absolutely not reactions to detailed explanations of why his entire approach is tone-deaf, inappropriate, and completely self-serving. Many people have pointed out that while he's trying to rebrand himself and make a comeback as some kind of expert on hitting rock bottom, the people whose lives he disrupted have moved on and found incredible success without him.
Others have questioned the entire concept of his podcast from both moral and practical standpoints, which honestly makes a lot of sense when you think about it. The idea that someone who caused such massive workplace drama and personal destruction would position themselves as an expert on recovering from rock bottom moments strikes many people as completely hypocritical and tone deaf. Critics argue that he hasn't really faced any meaningful consequences for his actions beyond losing his job and internet fame, and that 3 years away from the internet doesn't automatically qualify him to help others navigate their lowest moments. The whole thing feels opportunistic rather than genuine, which is probably why people are responding so negatively. But here's where the story gets even messier and more suspicious in ways that honestly made my jaw drop. Just as news of the separation was being widely reported across multiple outlets, TMZ and other paparazzi sources posted photos of Ned out with a completely new woman. The timing couldn't be more suspect. These photos were apparently taken just days before his podcast launch, which raises so many red flags. So while he and Ariel were preparing to sit down and discuss their separation publicly for the first time in this incredibly vulnerable and painful podcast episode, he was already being spotted romantically with someone else entirely. This timing has led to massive speculation about the true timeline of their relationship and whether the separation announcement was rushed out specifically to get ahead of these potentially damaging photos surfacing. If they had done the podcast without announcing the separation first, and then these photos came out showing him with another woman, Ariel would have been dragged through the mud and humiliated all over again in an even more public and devastating way. The optics would have been absolutely terrible, and it would have made him look even worse than he already does. The whole situation has left people questioning Ned's judgment and decision-making skills once again, because honestly, it seems like he hasn't learned a single thing. Many people are pointing out that he appears to have learned absolutely nothing from his original scandal about keeping his personal life private, being mindful of how his actions affect others, and especially being considerate of Ariel, who has already been through enough public humiliation and scrutiny. Looking at the bigger picture, the question everyone is asking is whether Ned's comeback attempt will actually be successful, or if this will be the only episode of his podcast that gets any real attention beyond morbid curiosity and people hate watching. Many people have stated outright that they're only interested in hearing what Ariel has to say and have absolutely no intention of listening to future episodes featuring other guests talking about their rock bottom moments. The concept of rock bottom could theoretically work as a podcast format. There's definitely an audience for redemption stories and conversations about overcoming personal failures and setbacks, which is a proven genre. But the fundamental problem is that many people don't believe Ned has actually hit rock bottom or learned meaningful lessons from his mistakes, which makes him an unconvincing host for this type of content. His return to the internet after only 3 years, combined with immediately being spotted with a new woman while still legally married to Ariel, suggests to many observers that he hasn't really changed or grown as a person. The pattern of behavior looks remarkably similar to what got him into trouble in the first place, making impulsive romantic decisions without considering the consequences or impact on others around him. There's also the legitimate question of whether he's actually qualified to help others navigate their lowest moments, when his own scandal was largely self-inflicted and involved hurting multiple people who trusted him completely. The remaining Try Guys, Alex the employee he had an affair with, and most of all Ariel, were all collateral damage in his poor decision-making and completely selfish choices. That's fundamentally different from someone who hit rock bottom due to addiction, mental health struggles, systemic oppression, or circumstances genuinely beyond their control. His situation was a direct result of his own choices and actions, which makes his positioning as some kind of recovery expert feel hollow and opportunistic rather than genuine or earned.
The internet's overwhelmingly negative reaction suggests that most people aren't ready to forgive and forget, and honestly, why should they be? The comment sections across multiple platforms are absolutely filled with people expressing that they have zero interest in his perspective on recovery and growth when the people he hurt are still dealing with the aftermath of his selfish choices years later. Some critics have pointed out that if he genuinely wanted to make amends and show real growth, there were probably much better ways to do it than launching a podcast that positions him as some kind of expert on bouncing back from mistakes. Staying private, focusing quietly on his family, doing actual community service work, or working behind the scenes to make amends would have been more appropriate and genuine responses to the damage he caused. But instead, he chose to thrust himself back into the spotlight in the most attention-seeking way possible, bringing Ariel along for what many people see as nothing more than a publicity stunt disguised as accountability and personal growth. The fact that they announced their separation in such a calculated, perfectly timed way with his podcast launch makes the whole thing feel manufactured and manipulative, rather than genuine or heartfelt.
The timing with the new woman photos makes everything even worse and more suspicious from a public relations standpoint. It suggests that while he was publicly discussing his rock bottom moment and separation from Ariel in this vulnerable podcast format, he was already moving on romantically without any real period of self-reflection, growth, or consideration for how this might affect his children or ex-wife. This pattern of behavior looks remarkably similar to the original scandal, acting impulsively without considering consequences, prioritizing his own desires over the well-being of others, and seeming to learn nothing from previous mistakes. It's honestly kind of impressive how he managed to step on the same rake twice in such a spectacular fashion. Looking ahead, it's honestly unclear what Ned's internet future looks like from here, and I'm not sure even he knows at this point. The Rock Bottom podcast exists and will probably continue for at least a few more episodes to fulfill whatever contractual obligations he has, but whether it gains any real traction or sustainable audience beyond curiosity seekers and people watching for the drama remains highly questionable.
The overwhelmingly negative reaction to his return suggests that most people simply aren't interested in his redemption arc, his personal growth journey, or his insights about recovering from public scandals. The trust has been broken not just with his family, but with the public who supported him for years. And earning that back will require more than a podcast and some carefully crafted interviews. For Ariel, many people are hoping this podcast appearance was her way of getting some kind of closure, and that she can now move on with her life completely separate from Ned's attempts to rebuild his public image and career. She's been through more than enough public humiliation, scrutiny, and personal pain, and she deserves to heal and move forward privately without being dragged into his comeback attempts or PR strategies. This whole situation proves that internet scandals can have long-lasting consequences that extend far beyond the initial news cycle, and that trying to make a comeback after such a public betrayal of trust is incredibly difficult, if not impossible in some cases. The internet has a long memory, especially when it comes to betrayals involving beloved creators and workplace misconduct. Whether Ned succeeds in rebuilding any kind of meaningful career, public goodwill, or sustainable income from content creation remains to be seen. But based on the current reaction from the internet and the entertainment industry, he's got an absolutely massive uphill battle ahead of him that honestly might not be winnable. Before I wrap this up, make sure you're subscribed with notifications turned on because something tells me this story is far from over, and honestly, I need witnesses for whatever chaotic nonsense happens next. With Ned back online, apparently already moving on romantically while still technically married, and the internet absolutely roasting his every move, there's probably way more drama and controversy headed our way faster than we can keep up with.
So what do you think about Ned's return to the internet and this whole messy situation? Was this podcast announcement a genuine attempt at accountability and personal growth, or just a calculated move to try to rehabilitate his completely destroyed image and maybe make some money? Do you think he's actually learned from his mistakes and changed as a person? Or is the timing with the new woman photos proof that he hasn't grown or evolved at all? Let me know in the comments what you think is going to happen next in this ongoing saga, because honestly, at this point, anything can happen, and I wouldn't be surprised. Thanks for diving into this absolute mess with me, and I'll see you in the next video where we'll probably be discussing whatever new disaster unfolds from this chaotic situation that just keeps getting messier and more dramatic by the day.